Hey there, it's Susan Pierce Thompson, and welcome to the weekly vlog. So, a little while ago, I was reading a blog article that I loved, and I don't remember where it was or who the author was. I thought of this just in terms of a topic that's been coming up in Bright Line Eating a lot lately. So, the blog article said, you can see different kinds of approaches to life when you drive on the highway and you see how cars react when there are blockages way up ahead that cause different speeds in the various lanes of traffic. Some people just stay in their lane, and they stay in their lane even when it becomes really, really clear over a long period of time that there's something wrong with their lane and it's going really slowly, way slower than the other lanes, right? They just stay in their lane. They're just there. They're going to stick it out for the duration, and they're never making a change. They're going to stay in their lane, even when it means that they're going to get to their destination way slower than if they'd just changed lanes to one of the lanes that wasn't clogged up. So there's those people. And then there's people who are changing lanes all the time, right? Like they're trying to game the system as if, by changing lanes back and forth and back and forth and forth and back and forth and back and, over three and then back over three more the other way, and trying to figure out that they're frustrated with the traffic, right? And they just feel like if they can just hop into a faster lane, they will get there way, 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 way faster. And they just end up, being annoying and not really getting there any faster. And, once in a while they'll get into a faster lane for a little bit, but then, the reality is it all comes out in the wash, and, they changed lanes a bunch, but didn't do themselves any service. And then there are people who stay in their lane until and unless an overwhelming amount of evidence emerges that they really should change lanes, that this one isn't, doing well for whatever reason. And then they make a calculated move and they look and they see, I really should change lanes. And they change lanes. And they change lanes, and then they stay in that new lane unless and until there's an overwhelming reason to make a change. So I thought this was a really humorous description, and it certainly is true. And I have definitely been guilty of being a lane changer in my life. I know that I can be impatient, and I can be a lane changer. Now, how this pertains to Bright Line Eating is there's something that we've started to call tinkering. And this comes out of the collective cumulative experience that we've had with so many people at maintenance in Bright Line Eating. Tinkering is when you change your food plan, and then you change it again, and then you change it again. It might be in response to your weight going up or going down, or not going up, not going down, rather. Trying to get your body to respond differently, or trying to keep your weight in a certain zone. And tinkering is when you're just constantly changing your food plan. And it's, I think, an extension of diet mentality. It's an extension of the person on the freeway who's thinking that they can fundamentally change the situation of being, caught in traffic by changing lanes over and over and over and over again and trying to get a different result, when what the tinkering does is it keeps you from sinking into the reality of, breathe. And here you are stuck in traffic, and it's going to be okay, and it's going to take a little longer to get to your destination. So with slow weight loss, sometimes people tinker because of slow weight loss, or with an extended lifetime of maintenance where your weight's gonna ebb and flow a little bit. And don't get me wrong, there are definitely times to change your food plan. If your weight's been climbing week upon week upon week, absolutely take something out of your food plan. If your weight's been dropping, and you're getting down below your goal weight range, absolutely add something to your food plan. But I'm talking about the adding and subtracting of food that is frequent and a sign of some sort of impatience or some sort of excessive focus on the food and the weight. I think this is another example of how we can get caught up focusing too much on the food and the weight. And one piece of advice I would have for someone who identifies as a tinkerer, and there are people in our Bright Lifers community who have identified themselves as a tinkerer, you can weigh yourself less often. You can deliberately focus on the scale less. And if your tinkering is because of what you're seeing on the bathroom scale that you're now trying to change, just giving, at least a week, if not 2 or 3, maybe even a month in between weighings might be helpful, right? You still have your clothes. You'll still know whether your weight is climbing or dropping unreasonably, right? Because you'll be able to tell from your clothes. You don't really need the number to verify that you're still the same size. Your clothes will tell you that, right? So I wanted to introduce the concept of tinkering because I think that once we get to maintenance, it's one of the things that can keep us from settling into the identity of someone who has arrived and who's had their bright transformation. And that reality of the food and the weight is handled, I've had my bright transformation, is really important as an identity shift, something to let sink into our identity. And I wanted to mention tinkering also because I see it in another way, especially among people who are more highly susceptible to the pull of addictive foods, people who are 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s on the food addiction susceptibility scale. A way that we can tinker is by changing our approach to handling the food overall, changing systems, changing programs, changing guides or sponsors, changing memberships, changing, right? Going from this 12-step program to that 12-step program to Brightline Eating to this sponsor to this guide and back again, or different approaches altogether, from keto to Atkins to and so forth, right? There's so many ways to handle your food, and being a lane changer in that way really keeps you from settling into one approach, digging deep and letting one approach work for you, letting it solve your problem, and moving on past the food and the weight to what life has waiting for you on the other side of this issue. So those are 2 levels at which tinkering can happen: being in Brightline Eating and tinkering by adding and subtracting food, or changing whole food programs. And really, you can spend decades doing that. I mean, I've done it. I have spent decades doing that. And the years where I have settled into one approach and let it sink into my bones deep have been among the most peaceful, productive years I've had, really getting beyond the food and the weight issue finally. So I invite you to pick a lane and stay in it. Stay in it until the evidence is overwhelming that there needs to be a change. And one final thing I want to say is, having people who know us really well on this journey, who also have the same kind of similar food and weight addiction issue that we have, and who have found peace and freedom from it, having them to talk to keep us in check when we want to tinker can be one of the most helpful tools. Oftentimes it takes an external perspective to point out, hey, yes, you could add or take out, that grain at lunch, but wouldn't that be the 3rd time, in 2 months that you've done that? And maybe just keep it in and stick and stay for a while and get another couple weeks of data before you go making another change. Having someone else to point that out to us can be incredibly helpful. So that's the weekly vlog. I'll see you next week.